on the actual device. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All good. Okay, hello everyone again. I'll redo the intro. Welcome to this week's Sticky Notes talk. As many people may know, we get together every other Friday for a member of the team to talk through a particular subject of interest. It could be anything from product research and design through to one-time passwords and semiotics. We then stream these short 15-minute chats for the benefit of our wider network, as we are today. So this week, I'm going to be talking to you about effective communication and how you can use active listening to improve the conversations you're having with others. So, why is good communication so important? I wanted to start just by highlighting that more often than not, we see businesses prioritizing the development of their team's hard skills, their technical skills, and more tangible things like new software and facilities over and above the development of soft skills such as communication and collaboration. Soft skills are often thought of as this fluffy thing that you either have or you don't have, and that's just the end of it. And as a result, the value that they add to your business is often underestimated. And this baffles me, particularly when you start doing some digging into the direct benefits that come with fostering these collaborative environments and investing in improving on communication. So teams that do invest time and effort into bettering their communication skills see improvements in their ability to handle conflict in a much more constructive way. We see increased innovation, improved productivity, better problem solving. And we also see the development of a much healthier workplace culture that's built on honest and transparent relationships, and ultimately an overall boost in job satisfaction with a really improved and aligned team direction. I think it's safe to say we're probably all really familiar with the concept that a happy and productive team with a common aligned direction are always going to be more efficient than one that's siloed, overworked, and divided. So, a couple of fun facts for you. An LSA global study found that highly aligned companies with strong communication grow revenue 58% faster and 72% more profitable, outperforming all of their misaligned counterparts. And while researching for a recent white paper, Sam, if you're online, we found that another study indicated that companies that are described as highly effective communicators had 47% higher total returns to shareholders when contrasted against companies described as being less effective in terms of their communication. So in just a few minutes, we can already see that by improving our communication and collaboration skills, we will ultimately see an improvement in achieving our objectives and improving that all-important bottom line. So it's really important to value and prioritize the development of these soft skills. So what does good communication actually look like? As you can imagine, pretty massive topic. We have this problem every week. Can't even scratch the surface. So there's some links at the end of this set of slides that I can flash up at the end for everybody. So for now, I just wanted to pull out a few of my favourites, things that personally I really value and that I think makes for good communication. So we've all heard 1,000 times over not to multitask and be present. We all talk about it a lot here at the User Story, but it's not just about physically ditching your phone and your emails, but it's also being emotionally present as well. So we're all guilty of running from one meeting to the next, straight into another one with no gap, going straight into a 9 a.m., straight from home after having conversations at home. And you can bring a lot of that emotional baggage, as it were, into the conversation that you're having. And it's trying to make an effort to remove all of that and focus very much on the conversation that you're having at hand. Set aside your personal opinion. I think we've actually mentioned this a few times in the talks that we've had so far, that you need to go into a conversation assuming you've got something to learn and be interested in other people. They've always got something to contribute to the conversation and you'll definitely learn something. One that I have to work on all the time, and I'm still not particularly good at, is trying to use open-ended questions wherever possible. Closed questions result in yes and no answers. They're really tempting to use to rush you through a meeting or a conversation as quickly as possible, but you are going to restrict the conversation and adapt your communication style not only to the environment, but the person as well. If you've ever found yourself in a situation where you feel like you've been really, really clear, but there's still some kind of disconnect between the two of you, it could be that there's a disconnect between that person's personality type and communicative style versus your own. I might be communicating in more of an evidence-based and facts and figures way to support my point, but is that really helpful if you who I'm talking to are driven more by emotive drivers and emotive benefits? Probably not. And then finally, listen. So this isn't just about what's being said, but it's also, as you've probably heard, what's not being said. We can talk at a rate of about 225 words per minute or more if you're me. But probably, if you're listening, you're processing up to double that, up to 500 words a minute. And that's because your mind's filling in the gaps around what's being said with the body language and the tone of voice that you're witnessing as well. And I think that last point speaks for itself. And that's where I just want to spend the last bit of time that we've got talking about. So, are you really listening? A healthy and effective conversation requires a balance of talking and listening to one another. But according to a Pew Research study, many of us, admittedly millennials and Gen Zers on the most part, are more likely to text than we are to call. We're less open to compromise than we ever have been. And the decisions we make are based on beliefs and opinions that we already hold. So we're not listening to each other, and generally people just aren't being heard. So with that in mind, some of you may be familiar with the idea that there are in fact 3 levels of listening. Level 1, internal listening. Level 2, listening to understand. And level 3, active listening, which can also be known as global listening. You may have heard of that term before. And I just wanted to run you through a little bit about each. So internal listening is when you're primarily focused on your own thoughts, your own opinions, judgments, and feelings. You're likely to relate words that you do hear to your own experiences and your own needs. This level of listening is something that you would default to for general day-to-day conversation, and that's entirely fine. It helps you form opinions, it helps you make decisions. So you might engage at this level if you were going into a shop to buy a new laptop. You're probably not going to retain all of the feature information, price plan information, model breakdowns that you're given in a half an hour period. But when you go home, you will absolutely remember the things that directly impact your budget and your needs. They're the things that you'll retain. And then level 2, listening to understand, this is when your focus shifts to being entirely on the speaker. So rather than focusing on your own thoughts and feelings, you filter all of that stuff out. You're very much focused on the speaker's words, their tone of voice, their body language. And this type of empathetic listening allows you to assess what's being said, but also like the way it's being said, the tone, and being able to tune into the meaning of the words that you're hearing allows you to better choose how you respond to what you've heard and what the effects of that response might be. So listening to this, you're probably sitting there thinking, well, this sounds more than enough to properly understand what's being said to me and have an effective conversation. But the trouble is it relies on the speaker delivering verbally what needs to be said, and it doesn't take into account the things that are maybe being skirted around or not said at all. And that's where active listening comes in. So this involves doing everything you would be doing when you're listening to understand, plus throwing in a little bit of your own intuition. So this means considering the environment around the speaker. It means considering their emotions and maybe, what's not being said and any external influences on the conversation. So if you get a gut feeling about something that might be influencing the conversation you're having, roll with it. Just go with the gut feeling. By bringing in other factors into the conversation you're having, you can then gauge the effect that has on the response you receive. So this is a really loose example of how this might look in a work capacity, so forgive it being a bit frilly. You might be communicating your progress on a project, for instance, along with some really, really positive results. You've been hitting your goals, you've been achieving your objectives. The person you're talking to, you've got a great relationship with, but the person you're speaking to just doesn't appear to be all that engaged or excited by the conversation that you're having and the results you're putting forward. They might even be perceived as being a bit short with you. And your gut's telling you that lack of engagement or perceived negativity is unlike them. The stakeholders in the room are also a bit negative. It's not quite right. And there's probably something more going on. So by just dropping in, we're really pleased to see that we're hitting our goals and the measurements that we're meeting, but I've got a feeling that there's something else on your mind at the moment. You may well just get a no, everything's fine, and you're no further along than had you said nothing at all, so what's the harm? But likewise, it could prompt further conversation where you find out that actually the team are a little bit deflated. They've just left a senior management meeting informing them of a change of direction, changes in project scope. They're nervous about it, that you just wouldn't have found out had you not done a little bit more digging. So what could have been a very standard project update with you all walking away feeling quite deflated, disappointed, you're questioning your relationship with that stakeholder, actually turns out to be more of a, one where everyone's walking away feeling a little bit uplifted and prepared for what's to come. So we've heard the benefits of actively listening, but how do you actually put that into practice? A few handy top tips to keep in mind when you're having your conversations would be to firstly pay attention. So give the speaker your undivided attention, look at the speaker directly, put aside distracting thoughts, avoid being distracted by environmental factors, and pay attention to body language as much as you are to what's being said verbally, because they speak equally as loud. Number two, provide feedback. So, as we said before, personal filters, assumptions, and beliefs can distort the things that you're hearing. So, as a listener, your role is to understand what's being said to you, and it might mean that you need to reflect on what's been said. So, you could try paraphrasing, what I'm hearing is X, or sounds like you're saying Y. They're quite nice ways to drop that in. Asking questions to clarify what you've heard. So, did you mean this when you said X? And even if you're quite new to this, just waiting until the point's been made and summarizing word for word what you've said, so that the speaker has got the opportunity to understand what you've taken away from the conversation. And avoid interruption. It can really frustrate the speaker and limit your understanding of the message that's coming across. And don't be pre-planning counter arguments and opinions. There's a really nice link at the bottom of this about us all having an advice monster, and that it's inside of us, and we're all itching to jump in and give opinions and advice, and we're built that way. So just don't encourage your advice monster, and respond appropriately. So, active listening is designed to encourage respect and understanding, and your job as the listener is to gain information and perspective. So be honest and open in your responses. Absolutely be assertive in your responses and your opinions, but always do it respectfully and treat the other person in a way that you think they'd want to be treated. So essentially, this has been my case to you that investing time and energy in mastering great collaboration and communication skills is absolutely a priority in any business. It will directly influence and affect your overarching goals, your bottom line. And a great way to start doing that is to start practicing active listening. You don't even have to introduce all of these changes at once. You can just bring one of the tips in, give it a go, reflect back on the conversation that you've had, consider what improvements you've seen, and just take it from there. And I definitely recommend encouraging others around you to do the same thing, so that you're fostering a team environment where active listening is standard. You'll definitely reap the benefits. And I just wanted to end here with the original question I asked, which is, are you listening? Maybe just spend a few minutes at some point today considering whether or not you really are actively listening when you're paying attention to people who think you are. And if you come away feeling like you're not, what from this could you just try the next time you're having a conversation? Give it a pop and see how it goes. So yes, thank you. I'll flash up on screen the resources for anyone online that needs it. But that's me. Thanks.
Assuming the microphone works, which I don't think it is. I have a quick question, which is, obviously lots of people are now working from home, and I think that's the case for lots of businesses now, that they've had to change the way that they communicate. Do you think there are differences in the way that we should actively listen remotely compared to in person?
Yeah, again, it's a personal thought on this, that I think that's where I think there's a temptation when you're using Teams and you're using Slack and to go in and do an audio call with people. And I think that's fine for a certain amount of the day-to-day chat that we're having. But when you really do need to spend time with someone, listen and understand, and you want to be practicing active listening, video all the time, people can see that you're paying attention, you're more encouraged to engage the way you need to. And I think maybe etching out a bit more time than you think you need sometimes, or even just allowing a little bit of time before and after the meeting so that you've got that headspace to let go of everything before you go into the conversation you're having, I think. Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions? I don't think the mic's working, but you can try it again.
Oh, I'll give it a go. Given, sometimes people are a bit exhausted, or even just based on personal ability, sometimes you're just not that attentive or present that you could possibly keep up with all of those inputs in the moment. Is there any benefits even, or just drawbacks or techniques around performing active listening in hindsight, basically, after the fact?
I think just that first point you made, I think is really important. And we're really good at this at the User Story in owning how you're feeling before you're going into a meeting. So if you don't feel like you're capable of maybe, particularly if it's a subject that you're covering where you do really need to be giving someone the time, owning the fact that you're in a space that means you might not be able to give your full self. I think you've got to respect that as much as, going in there and being there for the person you're talking to. But again, like we said at the end, I think you don't have to necessarily apply all of that. I think just making small changes and just picking one thing out and just thinking, okay, I'm going to be a bit more mindful about the fact that, I know I've got my notifications on for all my other apps. I'm just going to switch all of them off today and try and avoid, any distractions, even just doing one of those things, especially if you're feeling quite tired, worn down. I think focusing on one thing is maybe the way to go.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, team. Oh my God, I'm sweating so bad.